Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Machine Shop Growth Podcast, another episode of the Ops Edition. As you all well know, am Kirk Phelps, and we're going to talk a little bit more again today about standardization. I kind of went back through my notes after the last episode and thought, man, why is it that some of these things people are just so hesitant to implement? And I think I might have thought of something that we're going to cover and kind of get outside of the standardization part a little bit. But first, I want to get focus on what we were talking about in the last episode. Make sure we really kind of button that thing up, and then we'll go into the other stuff. So last week we talked about standardizing our tooling, standardizing our work holding, trying to standardize some of how we program parts and how those different standardizations also impact our programming, and then the impacts those things have on the floor and ultimately your bottom line, right? One of the things we didn't talk about, and it kind of goes in conjunction with tooling, is what do you hold those with, right? Standardizing our tool holders. Everybody here has been in the shop. You've got 10 different gauge lengths of ER16, ER20, ER32. Maybe you've got some TG100 holders. Maybe you've got some side locks, some hydraulics, some mechanicals, some milling chucks. Maybe you've got Rego Fix. We've got to narrow it down a little bit. And I get it. These things pile up over time, and you need a new holder for a job or whatever. You need an extra long gauge length or something like that, so you buy a new holder. And then, well, we need another one for this or whatever. Totally understand. And again, like I've said before, standardization is not all inclusive. It doesn't mean like, hey, we're going to use only this holder for anything, no matter whatever. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, and we'll get to this in a little bit, 80-20, right? We're going to standardize for 80% of what we do. 20%, we're going to make some, custom or special cases for the other 20% outliers. All right, so standardizing our tool holders. First thing, when you build your master tool list, you should build your master tool list with these standard holders. Okay. I used, a 2.76 inch gauge length ER32, and I forget what the ER16 was, a 3 inch or something like that. That was my standard. That's what I used. Every single tool was in those holders. If I know that tool's in those holders, what does that help me prevent? Variable, right? I'm removing the decision at that point. That tool stays in that holder. If I make a program, let's say we're doing a 5-axis part and I need to get some more reach. I need to get maybe a slim nosed tool holder in there so I can get real tight to a wall or something like that. We define that, right? If it's not defined, it is our standard. Okay. So what does standardization save in a programming workflow? Well, when we're setting up a part, when we're programming a part, we're giving out setup sheets, tool lists, whatever the case is. We got to define what tool holder you're going to use, or else you're just going to pick something, right? And sometimes maybe it doesn't matter. If you're doing a 3-axis part and you're just, you're roughing a profile, maybe it doesn't matter, but it should, right? And you're thinking it doesn't matter because, well, we're not going to interfere with the part. It's going to be totally fine. It doesn't matter. It should. And we're going to get into that here in a second as well. Okay, so your standard tool list, I no longer need to define what tool holder that tool goes into because it's known. It's known by the standard. Now, when we deviate from the standard, that's when we need to provide some sort of additional instruction, right? Hey, this is in a ER20 holder, and we're trying to clear the pallet, clear the part, clear the rotary, whatever the case is, the vise, who knows, right? We're gonna communicate that deviation from the standard. That's ultimately what we're doing. So when you talk about variables, right? One of the things that people use, like to put tools in for roughing, especially side lock. I have personally, I think, worked in at least two shops where I threw away every side lock holder in the shop, every single one of them. Variable. Okay. We're talking about standardization, and the value of standardization is by removing variable, right? Removing, we'll call it removing user input and just operating off of the standard. I've worked with too many people whose definition of tight are different. Okay. And we've also all worked in the shop where we're going to put this, we want this end mill in a side lock holder. Oh, we don't, it doesn't have a welding flat. Just throw it over there on the grinder. Just grind your own flat. Well, again, if you don't have a standard procedure on how to grind that flat, it's up to the operator, the setup guy, or whoever to put on an appropriate flat. Well, what if they don't? I mean, I've run some end mills that were $700, $800, $900 in carbide. You don't want to blow that up. We need to get max runtime out of that. Okay, so I'm not saying side lock holders are all bad. There is uses for them, I guess, as much as it hurts me to say that, because I despise side lock holders. I've especially, cutting aluminum, the harmonics of cutting aluminum and the vibration. I've had it loosen the screw up, suck the tool down, mill a slot in the table. I've had bad things happen with side lock holders, and I've never had that happen with other mechanical milling chucks. So why bother? And we'll get into a little bit of tool holder selection here in just a second. Okay, so again, we standardize that tool list for our standardize our tool holders for our standard tool list. Now, what about standardizing what each tool holder is used for? Okay, and you got to think about a little bit about application, what you're trying to achieve versus what that tool holder is actually rated for. I used to use Shunk Tendo E hydraulic holders several years ago, and I still use them today. Don't get me wrong, but several years ago they were on a great discount. I think you bought four holders and you got the fifth one for free, and they're like $250. The clamping power is amazing. The TIR was amazing. All this stuff was great. Oh, this is a great deal. I'm getting these things. Well, until I learned that those are not meant for roughing, because I blew up several of those holders by pushing them a little too hard. Of course, the rep, never said that. Like, oh, it's the best thing on the market. Well, I found out that you should not really go rip on them things. They're not really designed for that. There's some things that happen with the grease and stuff inside of there that they'll literally just let go of an end mill at some point. An ER32 or an ER16, if we're doing some heavy roughing, you should not use that because of the vibration. There's no vibration dampening whatsoever in an ER32 collet. You're literally clamping on an end mill with a spring. That's what those collets are. They're springs. It's not the appropriate holder, right? So again, it's not just standardizing what tool holders you use, it's standardizing the application for your tool holders. Okay. And I know the feedback and I know the pushback I'm going to get. It's like, oh, you don't think we should use side lock holders? You think we should use Amugi FPC chucks or Rego fixed chucks? That's just so expensive. You don't understand. You're right. It is. And let me tell you something. I've written multiple case studies on the benefit of using an Amugi FPC chuck. I haven't really done any on Rego, but Rego and Amugi are almost identical in my opinion. Amugi tool holders are a little bit more expensive. I'm sorry, Rego tool holders are a little bit more expensive than Amugi, and you have to either use their hydraulic press Interpack porta power, whatever you want to call it, or you have to buy their hydraulic press. And I think about 8 years ago it was $8,000. So I don't even want to take a guess at what it would cost today. I can buy a lot of holders for $8,000 to $10,000. So this is getting me to my next point that I was going to make is when you're standardizing, And again, we're not just standardizing for today. We're standardizing to help us down the road. I want you to think about the future and not just think about what I have to do right now. And here's why. There's one instance when I used, I think it was actually when I was using shunt holders in the very beginning for roughing. Hydraulic holders do have great vibration dampening properties. However, it is a fluid that is essentially compressing, and it's not really a fluid inside there. It's like a grease, but it is a liquid, right? It's not a solid, it's not a gas, it's a liquid. I mean, we're gonna get a little bit of science on you here. So you're using this clamping force generated by a fluid. Fluid is, not a what'd you call that? A rigid substance. Any fluid, right? So yes, it does dampen vibration, but it's not going to kill it. You can push it out of the way with enough force. Now, if you're using, an 1/8 inch end mill, something like that, yeah, you're not gonna be able to generate enough force to displace any kind of fluid with that much clamping power or gripping force. That's just not possible. I got that. But let's say we're using a 3/4 inch end mill. I mean, we can we can create some force on that. And that's partly how these holders blow up. Now, what happened in this case study? Well, I used the shunt and it was going great till it wasn't, till it blew up, right? And I put that Amugi FPC milling chuck in there. And if you haven't used an Amugi FPC chuck, they are a holder and a collet system. The top of the collet is threaded. You put your tool in, you thread it into the holder, and then there's a screw through the side of the holder that turns a worm that gives you an incredible mechanical advantage. And it's got a specified torque range and all that. They provide you a torque wrench. Tighten the tool down. I mean, the clamping force is massive. Their TIR is around a tenth. And you get a great vibration dampening because you have dissimilar metals in contact with each other. And the amount of metal around that tool, I mean, there's some serious density that's going to also aid in your vibration dampening. But it's all those things put together that almost doubled my tool life. I didn't blow a holder up and cost me $250 in the middle of a job. I didn't have any downtime because the tool holder was great, right? Um, I think I had to run 4 parts to pay for that tool holder in the cycle time gains and the fact that I didn't blow a tool holder up. Okay. So let's go to another one. Technics milling chucks. Awesome. I love them. They're great. They're inexpensive. They're a great option. And I did another, you know, side by side against the Amugi FPC chuck. And it was an Anika part, and we were taking a pretty deep cut. And we started having problems with the M mill pulling out. And we were breaking them and stuff. And again, it's application, right? And so we switched to an FPC chuck with the pin lock. What the pin lock is, you buy your end mill with a Weldon shank, you line the Weldon shank up tangent to a cross hole, and you put, I think it's an eighth inch or 93 thousandths dowel through the hole and tangent the Weldon shank, and then you tighten a little screw up on the back to push it down against the taper of the Weldon onto the pin, and now you can't pull your end mill out. Threw that thing in there, and I'll be damned if I didn't double tool life again. We weren't pulling tools out anymore. Every time you do that, you break it in a milling chuck and you got a sleeve in there. That sleeve pretty well has to be thrown away. So it wasn't just the cost of an end mill, it was a cost of a $50 sleeve or whatever. So we eliminate all that expense. Why I tell you that is you may look at that and you may say, that's expensive. We don't want to spend that money, whatever it is. I get it. I understand. It's a tough pill to swallow when you're buying a $500 tool holder. But I'm telling you what, if you're actually running your machine hard, if you're actually roughing, and not just semi roughing, what we'll call it. If you're actually pushing your tool, you will make that money back, and you'll make it back a lot faster than you think. Not just from a perspective of, um, broken carbide, but from a perspective of save downtime, because you're going back. Oh, we ran through this whole part and didn't realize this one tool broke. We got to go rerun it, whatever the case may be, right? Even the downtime of the two end mill broke. I got to put a new one in there. I got to go find a new collet. I got to do all these things. Nope, you just ran it. Part's done because you had the correct tool holding. Okay, Rego Fix is another great option. They have the same what would you call it? The same thing with holding with the welding flat. It's just a little bit different, where you put a little key on there and it actually threads into the collet. But um, RegoFix makes great stuff as well. Those two, in my opinion, if you're going to do some heavy roughing, that's where you need to be. Side locks, sure, they'll work. Milling chucks, yeah, they'll work. But if you want like guaranteed, repeatable success and eliminate variables, you got it. And that's another thing too. When you buy a tool that has either that torque wrench or like the Rego Fix where you have a hydraulic press, again, you eliminate your variable, right? You're not depending on like, is this person under tightening? Is this person over tightening it? You have a great example with an ER16 collet. This has happened to me twice in my career. I would go to get an ER16 collet. I put a tool in. I was boring a hole, interpolating a hole. Put the tool in. We run the part. The bore comes out like 15 thousandths big. Oh, what? There's no comp in the machine. I checked the master cam. I checked the program. The part model. All these things, thinking there's got to be some kind of mistake. Like, how could that possibly happen? And then, you know, everybody starts looking at the machine like, oh man, maybe there's backlash, and we got indicators in there. We're checking backlash and everything. No. So I'm like, maybe the tool's running out really bad. So I stick an indicator on there, and I mean, this tool was like cutting an oval. So I take the tool out and I look at the tool holder. It was cracked. The ER16 tool holder body, where the collet interfaces, was cracked. So when I tightened that nut, it pushed, it biased the collet wherever the hell it wanted to go. And this has happened to me twice, you know. Um, so there's more variable right there, right? Like if you're leaving it up to an operator to tighten a nut, it's a variable. All the milling chucks, the hydraulic holders, there's no variable, right? A shunt hydraulic holder, you just tighten the screw until it stops. A milling chuck, you tighten the sleeve until it stops. There is no variable here, right? So this is where I say, yes, they are more expensive, but you remove all, I can't say all because people do crazy stuff. I've been around long enough to know the phrase, you can screw up a sledgehammer in a sand pile. True, right? Um, Stuff happens, but you're eliminating as much risk as you possibly can when you use these holders. Now, should you use these holders for every tool? Absolutely not. If you're drilling a hole, why would you ever put that in? No, I won't say ever. There are circumstances you should. But if you're drilling a hole, why would you put that in a Rego Fix or a Mugi milling chuck? You wouldn't, especially if you're talking like cobalt drill. Now, I said there are circumstances where you might. Carbide drill, if you're drilling a deep hole, you want to give it the best possible spindle connection you can. The least run out you can have, the better hole condition you're going to have as you continue to go deeper and deeper. And without spot drilling, if you want to go to a 7D drill, sometimes I'll spot drill if I'm over 5 times D. But if I know I have it in a good holder, my runout's good, I'll just let it rip. That'll be all right. Okay, so there are times when you will, but I'll never say never. Reamers. How many of us have stood at the machine and been ready to push our heads straight through the window of that machine, indicating in a reamer? Yep, absolutely. Throw that baby in a hydraulic holder, you're no longer indicating reamers. It's there. Unless your reamer's bent, then, well, I guess in that case, you should probably get another one. But reaming holes, and hydraulics got it. You don't got to worry about it. Or, even better circumstance, or worse, I guess. Maybe your operator doesn't indicate it in at all. They go run the part and they blow the hole out. So again, we're talking variables here. Now, there are budget constraints. Get that completely. So, and again, like you do what you got to do. I've done it for years. Years. We don't have the right tool. We don't have the best tool. But we don't have, this job doesn't necessarily pay for that. So we're not going to go buy it. We just got to figure it out. We got to get it done. Got it. What this is more so is this is a future planning objective. Okay, we're not talking about one job paying for this standardization effort. We're not talking about getting a big invoicing for a big tooling line and saying, "Oh, you need to pay tooling," and then, "Oh yeah, we're going to go spend this all on standardizing our tooling." No, what we're talking about here is we're talking about making these improvements to increase your bottom line. A healthy business reinvests 30% of the bottom line back into the business. Okay. And this is a great opportunity for that investment because I'm telling you, you will ROI so fast. If you standardize your tooling and your tool holders, how many hours do you think per year you spend looking for tools? Oh, I need this 5/8 M mill with a 2-inch length to cut, the 60 thou radius, and it needs to be a 7 flute with chip breakers. And you go look and look and look, only to find out we don't have it in the first place. We got to order it. Well, you don't have to order if it's on your standard tool list, right? It's sitting in the cart. Or you go look for a tool. Oh, I'm looking for this tool. I can't find it. And guess what? Chuck comes over and he's like, "Hey, can you go over here and take a look at this?" Or, "Hey, did you see that game last night?" And now you're sitting here worrying about that when the tool could have already been in the machine. You could have been making parts if you just standardized it. Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, without doing a time study for a month at a time, I'm willing to bet hundreds, if not thousands of hours, depending on the number of people you have in your shop, get spent every year looking for tools. Okay. All right. So standardizing our tool holders kind of give you a little bit of an idea of like applications. So we got our tools standardized. We got our tool holders standardized. I just brought up another good point. Searching for tools. What are you storing your tools in? Do you have a system for that? Are you standardized on your tooling inventory system? Most shops are probably going to say no. And when I was working out west in Washington, there was a company out there. It's now part of PT Solutions, but they had a system. It was called FTS Ware, and PT Solutions still has this system available. In my opinion, this is the best tooling inventory management system ever created. And there's a few reasons why. I've used a few other ones. I've used some creative, from the IMC group, the Crib Master, that kind of stuff. They're fine. But the system that PT Solutions has, FTS Ware, is amazing because it will sit right on top of the listed cabinet that you own. And because you own it, if you wanted to fill that cabinet full of candy bars, you can. You own all the inventory. You own the cabinet. You only, and when I used it, you only leased the software from them. But the best part was if I leased the software and I bought things through the cabinet, I got a 2% rebate up to the subscription fee. So if you buy enough tooling, it costs you actually nothing to have this inventory system. Okay. So what makes it great? Well, the user interface, amazing. Very simple to use. You can customize, custom name your tools and things like that. So you can go search for them. There was Very, very easy to set min max, your PO system and everything. You ran all of your purchase orders through there. Basically, I spent the first year approving all POs. So I would look at, until I got my min max levels hit right, I would, approve all the POs. Once I got my min max levels dialed in, I just let it auto PO. I didn't even look at it. I mean, I literally eliminated a need for an entire person by not having to order tooling. Okay. So I go back to the thing like, oh, we're a job shop. We don't ever make the own part twice. We don't need that. It's not right for us. I tell you something right now. Okay. This thing costs $1,200 a year, $100 a month. For somebody to say we don't need that, one reason would be price. Okay. And I told our salesman when we were working together, and he was supposedly going to get some shirts made, but I don't think he ever did. I said he came in one day and I'm like, and he said that somebody was complaining about price. And I'm like, $100 a month. If my shop rate is $100 an hour, which is pretty low, especially for Western Washington, nobody's running for $100 an hour out there. But if my shop rate's $100 an hour, I got 5 people working here, and one person goes to the bathroom for what is it, 20 minutes a week. That's 100 minutes, right? It's 1 hour and 40 minutes. We'll just call it an hour and a half, right? At $100 an hour, that's $150 a week. We'll just make it simple. $100 or $150 a week times 4 is $600 a month. That inventory system is cheaper than shit. Literally, right? if we're spending that much time a month in the bathroom, I mean, it's $600 a month, $100 a month for your inventory system. It's literally cheaper than going to the bathroom. So anyway, I get back to this point of you got to have a localized storage system. You can't just your storage system can't be this guy's toolbox, that guy's toolbox, and we just got a bunch of drawers. Like when stuff isn't labeled, you have no idea where stuff is. That is just absolutely brutal. Okay, I mean the amount of time you lose is killer. Now here's the beauty. Here's the beauty behind an inventory management system like this. Okay, you go into a drawer. I got a drawer full of 1/2 inch end mills. 1 inch length to cut, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, 1 3/4, 2 inch, maybe 2 1/2, 30 rad, square corner, 60 rad, 90 rad, 120 rad, all the way up and down, right? Half or 5 flute, 7 flute, 3 flute, 9 flute, whatever. Pretty easy to mistake and grab a different one, right? Pretty easy to go in there and be like, oh yeah, I need this, and not pay attention and realize you grabbed um a 60 rad instead of a 90 rad, or a 90 instead of a 60, or a 67, whatever. Okay. Pretty easy to make that mistake. When I set this cabinet up, kind of sounded crazy to me at first, but the guy I was working with out there said, randomize everything. Don't put two of the same, even close to the same tools next to each other. It's like, that's kind of weird. The best advice I've ever been given, because you have a computer sitting right on top of the thing, right on top of your cabinet, and it literally tells you where the tool is. So what does it matter? What does it matter if everything's in the same spot, or in a sequential order? It doesn't. It doesn't mean anything, because you could just look it up and it could tell you exactly where to go. All right. So um yeah, you get all your tools in the same spot and you keep it locked up. Here's another interesting point of it. Okay. When I had people check tools out, they had to of course they had their employee number. So we knew who was taking the tools out. Not because I was worried about somebody stealing them, but if the same guy was breaking the same tool multiple times, like I could see that. I could track that. Be like, hey, hold on, man. Like, do we need to work through something? We need to do a little bit of training, or whatever the case is. Okay. But also, you can require a job number, you can require a part number, you can require a machine. I always required, of course, employee ID, you have to log in. I require job number, part number, and machine you were running it on. Hey, maybe this one machine is getting loose. And it's, tearing tools up because of it. Well, now we know, hey, there's a trend happening here because I got 2 machines. Maybe I got 2 VF3s, and this VF3 is being fine, and this VF3 is breaking. These tools were running the same parts. Well, but maybe we got a problem in this other machine. They're running the same parts, same program, all that kind of stuff. We need to look at this other VF3. We need to find out, hey, what's going on here? What's the problem, right? So you can use this data to evaluate trends and analyze trends. Are we spending too much? How much money in tooling is this job consuming? How much money in tooling is this part consuming? Like, do we need to adjust our pricing? Is this why, maybe our bottom line's taking a hit because we're just dumping money down the drain in tooling? Well, if you use the cabinet, you get the data. You get the data, you can analyze it, and you can make a decision. Okay. So, how we store tooling is incredibly important. How we store everything is important. Okay. Um, Work holding, all this stuff. Like, we just can't have it thrown about the shop. You know, put it put it somewhere where it's easy to access. It's ergonomic. It makes sense. All these things. Like, we want to make sure that everything is easy. I said this last week or in the last episode. Work smarter, not harder. You know, I all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make your life easier. But I'm not. There's nothing else about it. I mean, like I said before, used to crank handles all the time. So, a little bit of backstory. I quit. I quit doing this stuff. I went to trade school. I went work for my dad, and I mean, we were running old Warner Swayze turret lathes from World War II, Bridgeports, Seekeys, causing the LeBlanc servo shift. We had a LeBlanc servo shift lathe at our shop. And man, I just got so tired of getting cut and burnt and smelling like oil all the time. I was like, you know what? The hell with it. I'm going to the military. So I did that, and I was an MP, did tons of cool stuff. Sniper school, SWAT school, went to investigator school, spent a couple of years as an investigator. I could have very easily went out and went and been a cop and did cool stuff. But I realized through all that, I just like making stuff. Like, this is what I'm good at. I don't know how to be anything else but a maker. And so I came back toward the end, went and spent some time in a few shops. I mean, I never really stopped doing this. I was always, when I would come back on vacation and stuff, see my family, go to work with my dad and do all this. And so I never really like fully turned the switch off. But then everybody's got CNCs and they're enclosed and coolant stays in the machine. I'm like, this is awesome. But do you know what that did? It made it easier, right? We were working smarter rather than harder. We don't need to go out there and crank handles and sweat. And, we didn't have air conditioning, and we had some big weld jobs. Buddy, let me tell you, end of July, August in Ohio, and the small shop we were in that only had one door at the front, so we couldn't even get an airflow through the building. 96, 97-degree day. We're just laying beads all day. Got hot in there, real hot. And so, I go one of the first jobs I had out of the military was an AS 9100 shop. It is 70 degrees in here all day. This is incredible. And, chips aren't flying at my face. I could do this, right? And so that's my whole point is I just want to let's work smarter, not harder. Let's make things easier, right? Okay. All right. So standardizing our tool holders, standardizing our tool storage, and things of that nature. Those are incredibly important. I'm telling you, they'll make a world of difference in your life. The last point I want to kind of hit today, 80-20 rule. Okay. So where I think people get hung up with a lot of this, with a lot of implementing change and process improvements and things like that is they look at a solution and they say it's not a good one because it doesn't solve all my problems. Oh yeah, that might work for this, but it won't work for that. And what I'm going to ask people to do is look at it from the top down. Look at your problem from the top. It's not just this one problem, right? Look at all of your problems. Will this solution cover 80% of them? If it will, you should do it every single time. Now, we can't just look at it as parts again, right? We can't just look at it as part numbers, because what happens is we look at this solution by part number and we say it's only going to work on 50% of my part numbers. So that's not a good idea. That's a dumb idea. We're not going to do it. But what if 50% of those part numbers make 80% of your revenue? Now it's a good idea, right? What if 50% of those part numbers have 80% of your cycle time? What if 50% of those part numbers, 80% of the tools are the same as 100% of your part numbers? Do you see what I'm getting at here? Too many times, I think people look at the part number and just say, it's not going to work for all of them. We're not going to do it. Or they just, and quite frankly, I made a comment last week about the whole AI in 2 years thing. Part of the reason that's never going to happen is because anybody that actually knows anything about this industry knows that change doesn't happen in 2 years, period. This is this is a tough industry to change. And so I think that's another part of the reluctance for process improvement is we've been doing it this way, 20 years. My dad showed me this, my grandpa showed me this. This is just how it's done. Not anymore. Okay. So I think that that's another part of it is just that reluctance of I don't want to do it. I mean, I think I brought this up once before, but I worked on a project for a customer once. They had a part they brought in, aerospace part, and they've been around for years. They've been doing this part for a long time, and this happens all the time, all sorts of shops. They had this part come in, and they just had to get it done. And their current process, when I evaluated this for them, was about 32 days across 8 machines. It was, I mean, it wasn't a super hard part, but it definitely had some stuff going on. And I looked at it and I was like, this is insane. What happened was they made this part, PPAP'd it, and it became a frozen process. You know, if you've worked in PPAPs and frozen processes, it takes some work to get that thing changed. But I'll tell you what, when I went and gave them a solution with fixturing programs, gave them a first part runoff, all that, and I reduced their time from 32 days down to 8 hours in one spindle, where they could pump out one finished part every 8 hours. You get that frozen process changed. Absolutely. So that's what happens, right? We get this process, we get this thing in our head, something works, and we're like, we're not changing it, we're not doing anything, just keep doing it like that forever. But what ends up happening is you lose on these the advances in technology. They're literally there, make your life easier, make things go faster. I worked with some other guys, best, most skilled guys I think I've ever worked with in my life. I mean, these guys have all been doing this longer than I've been alive. Incredibly, incredibly talented. If it was, for 1992, and it's nothing to hate on these guys for at all. Love them. I still talk to them to this day. But one of my things that I always said to, especially our foreman, is he would be like, "Well, we put out a lot of parts last year. We've done a lot of parts and made a lot of money." And my response to him was always, "You're right, and I'll never take that away from you, and I'll never say you're not good. The problem is I can't replace you. I can't go find your skills on the street. I can't go find your knowledge and your experience on the street. So I have to evolve what I do to the talent I have available, right? So going back to this 80-20 rule, again, we're not just talking part numbers. Look at your people. When you want to implement a change, your change also has to involve, is it good for 80% of my people? If it is, I got to do it. This isn't a democracy, of course. Well, we always want to solicit input, but it's not necessarily like, hey, we're going to vote on every decision. If we did that in business, do you know how long it would take to make any kind of decision? You would almost have no decision, right? So as an owner, as a leader, as a whoever, you have to be willing to step up, make those decisions, and you make those decisions based on data. And you can solicit feedback, but going back to the point, we're not just focusing on 80% of part numbers. We're focusing on 80% of our people. Maybe it's a change that affects 80% of our customers. Maybe it's a change that affects 80% of our material that we bring in, 80% of our tooling, 80% of our work holding, 80% of our equipment, all these things, right? You got to look at this and say, hey, if it's good enough for 80%, it's good enough to do it. Now, there are exceptions, right? Sometimes maybe it's like 75%, maybe it's 70%, but maybe there's opportunity that's going to come in and you're gearing up for that opportunity. The 80-20 rule is what applies to today. 80-20 rule also applies to opportunity, right? And direction and vision and growth. Does this change align with 80% of your vision for the future? Well, then you should start planning for that, and you should start doing those things incrementally to align with your vision and your goals for the future of your company, for the future of your cell, right? I'm not even just talking to owners here. I'm talking to frontline leaders. You've got a responsibility to yourself, to the department, the division, to whatever that you're leading, to also maintain some sort of vision. Now, it needs to stay concurrent with the vision of the company and all that kind of stuff, but you're the one actually doing, right? So you've got to have some sort of strategic goal or vision for your area of responsibility, in a direction you want to take your people as their leader. Well, make sure that the things you're doing today are aligning with 80% of that goal, that vision, that direction, those strategic objectives. Make your continuous improvement, hit that 80% threshold. So when I'm talking about standardizing tool holding, I'm talking about standardizing work holding. Okay. Some people will say, I have no reason to standardize. You put a part in a mill? Ever. Mm-hmm. All right, let's say we're an all mill shop. 100% of my parts go into a mill. You're telling me that you shouldn't make any sort of change to standardize your work holding because you literally hold every single part you make no matter what. And you're telling me it doesn't make sense to do that. I think you're wrong. Do you put a tool in a holder, or do you just use some sort of gravitational device in your spindle to hold your end mill there? No, you put it in a holder, right? 100% of the time, if you're cutting a part, guess what? That tool's in a holder. 100% of the time. Mill, lathe, grinder, you got to hold your wheel on the spindle, right? A little bit different. Let's just not even get into that. But lathe, mill turn, 5 axis, whatever. You are holding your tool. So you're telling me it doesn't make sense to make that change when it's something you do 100% of the time. Yes, it does. Do you have to go find tools when it's time to make a part? Yeah, 100% of the time. So you're telling me an inventory management system doesn't make sense for you. You're wrong. Do you have to program your parts? Yes, 100% of the time. So you mean it doesn't make sense to standardize your programming, to use one CAM software, to standardize that workflow, standardize all these things that improves your programming efficiency and your accuracy of output programs. You're telling me it doesn't make sense to do that. Not true. You see, this is what I'm telling you and have been telling you. The rules of manufacturing apply no matter if you make 1 or 1 million. It's all the same, right? And when you look at continual improvement, you look at your fastest ROI for improvement. And your fastest ROI for improvement is going to be the changes that impact 80% of what you do. Right? 80% of the time you spend, because time is money, the change that impacts that is going to have my fastest ROI. If what time do we not get paid for in a machine shop? Setup time, right? Because setup time is non-spindle turning time. If that spindle's not turning, you're not making money. So if I can standardize my tool holding, my tooling, my work holding, I just cut three of the biggest factors in setup time. Because the setup time of picking up your work offset generally probably takes under 5 minutes. The setup time of finding a tool holder, finding a tool, maybe I got to find a special vise, whatever, getting all that stuff put together, put in the machine, tool length offsets picked up, everything like that. That is where, get ready for this, that's where 80% of your setup time lives. So if our change is impacting that 80%, it's a change to make. Oh yeah, I just gave you another category to look at, right? Setup time, cycle time. Make a change that impacts 80% of those. Right? So if I standardize my tooling, my tool holding, and let's say we use the same system I was talking about before where I throw my tools in a cart. If it's in the machine, it's touched off. If it's in the cart, it's touched off. I get a tool list. I got to add 10 tools to the machine. It's a 20 tool program, but 10 of the tools are already in the machine because I have a standard tool list that I work from. Now I've only got to go grab the other 10 tools off my cart, throw them in the spindle. How long do you think it takes you to manually change a tool? I'm going to say, we'll just say 1 minute. So it took me 10 minutes to load all those tools. How long do you think it would take you to go find all those tools, go put them in a tool holder and get them in the machine? I'm guessing at least 3 times as long. I'm guessing that takes you 30 minutes. Go round up 10 tools, find tool holders, get them put in, put all the tools you just took out away, get back to the machine, load them all in. I'm guessing it takes you 3 times as long. So if I'm saving you 20 minutes of setup, and let's say you're doing 3 setups a day, that's an hour. That's 5 hours a week. That's 20 hours a month. At $100 an hour, that's $2,000. I mean, do you like, and that's with one guy setting machines up, and that's at $100 an hour, which nobody's really charging, and it's compounding, okay? Because yes, I saved that there, but now I also increase throughput, right? I take that spindle downtime and I turn it into runtime. But when I save an hour a week, right? Sorry, no, when I save 5 hours a week, I'm actually giving 5 hours more production time at the end of the week. Okay, so I'm giving you more availability to make more parts because and increase throughput, right? Everybody has this, everybody's got sort of a lot of the same struggles. Can't keep up with deliveries. We're so busy, we just can't keep up. I'm helping you keep up with deliveries here, right? I'm helping you make more money and become a better asset to your customers by making these simple changes, right? So again, the 80-20 rule. I live and die by it. In my personal life, in my work life, everything I do is 80-20, always. Like I said, I coach youth soccer, and I hear, well, this person said that person said this. The 80% I'm worried about is what's happening on the field. I could care less what anybody else says. That's the 20%. Don't care. Don't worry about it. I don't plan my life for the 20%. I plan my life for the 80%. I put into, the stuff that gets me wins. I don't care so much about the other stuff. Now, I'm not saying the other stuff can just fall off to the wayside. Like, you still have to worry about it, but to an extent. But if I'm putting a ton of thought into something, it's to the 80%. I'm going to make that 80% the best it can possibly be. So, okay, guys, I think that's what I got for today. Standardization, huge, critical. Start doing it. as quickly as you can while still being financially responsible. I'm not advocating for anybody to just go out and dump 20 grand on new tooling and tool holders. That's not the case. Hey, budget it, plan for it. This is a goal. Maybe this is a goal for Q4 this year. Let's get through Q2. Let's review our numbers. Let's see what we can allocate for this standardization effort. But going back to our inventory management system, those don't cost anything. There's no planning. There's no budgeting. Just do it. Call your tool rep. Find out what systems they've got. Get demos. See what makes sense to you to use. But do it. I'm telling you, if you're not using an inventory management system, you're hurting yourself big time. The time, the money, the frustration it will save. I've talked to guys that have been installed tooling management systems, and they have opened drawers and found one tool they had like 60 of, and 59 of them they didn't have any idea they even had them. The amount of money you waste on stuff that you already have, every shop does it. Every single one of them, unless you have a good tooling management system. Oh, and the best part is, for all my AS9100 shops out there, that system that I was talking about, FTSware, they also make the same exact management system for gauging. So your AS9100 shop, your ISO 9001, you got to keep track of your gauging, right? You can put your gauges, your quality inspection gauges or whatever, your calibrated gauges in this cabinet. You can upload the certs in there. You can set the recal date. It'll alert you when they need recalibrated. Send them out. Store your certs back in there. Now you're all stored in the cloud, so you've got your redundancy there in case the building catches on fire or whatever. If you need to know who had something when something got broken, whatever, they have to check it out. What job it gets used on, right? So what if you've got a recall on a part? You have an escapement, and your customer calls you and says, "Hey, we need to do a gauge R&R on the whatever you used to inspect this with." I know what gauge got used on that. You know why? Because when they checked that gauge out, when they were making that part, they had to say what gauge they were using. So now I can go check those mics. I can go check that indicator. I can go check those calipers, the thread gauge, the whatever, and say, "Yep, it was a bad gauge. We caught it." And I can, write up my NCR, my supplier corrective action report, and we're all good to go. And guess what? Makes us look like absolute rock stars. So you should check that out. If you work with PT Solutions, check it out. If you don't work with them, get a hold of them. I mean, they're pretty well nationwide. So, yeah, man, I think that's all I got for you guys today. Before you talk to you guys in a couple weeks. Thanks.
So again, if you have not subscribed to the podcast, please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Those positive reviews really do fuel us forward, and we'd love a review from you so that we could go and continue to impact people in this amazing industry of machining. So we are so grateful. And again, we are doubling our content this year. No more 2 episodes a month. We're going to 4 episodes a month, and a couple of them will be sales, marketing, growth. The other 2 will be ops, engineering, and the floor. It'll really be the floor, like what happens on the floor, right? We're so grateful for all of you. So make sure that you tune in next week for another episode of Machine Shop Growth Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great week.